So thank you for all getting here promptly and buzzing now and just kind of sharing some of your experiences today. Just want to do some kind of formal introductions for this session. So for those that don't know me already, my name is Simon Butler. I'm Head of Engagement and Best Practice here at the Forum. This afternoon's session is on how to tell a story with numbers. We've got a couple of great presentations this afternoon, an opportunity for you guys to ask some questions and think about how you can apply some of these principles and practices into your organisations once you leave here today. So in terms of the presenters we've got Marie Montoya, who is an insight analyst at RSA, and we're really lucky to have Marie here with us today because she's already shared this session once previously for us in a smaller audience in London in November. So you can imagine how popular she's feeling because now she's got about 3 times more people coming to this one. That's how good it was last time. And we've got Ian Robertson, also from the Forum, a specialist with the Forum, who's going to talk to us a bit about the hero's journey and how you can tell stories with data. So lucky to have those guys with us, so thank you for being here. Just before we get on to that, I'm just going to kind of set the scene a little bit and start to ask the question around kind of where we are now with telling a story with numbers. I've been in a couple of sessions already today, and really feels like organisations, many of you are in a place where you're starting to really get a sense in your organisation that your ability to communicate insight and analysis in a compelling way is something that is starting to get more and more traction within your organisation, starting to become more and more meaningful for your organisation, and the people in your organisation perhaps are looking for you to kind of do this more for them and improve the kind of quality of the insight that you're generating for the organisation. And it feels like perhaps as an industry we are kind of at a bit of a tipping point here now. I've got an image up there of the 2016 Global Contact Centre Benchmarking Report for Dimension Data. We're going to have a look at a couple of things that have come out of that around insight and analytics, and just to kind of really reiterate the point of where we are as an industry and kind of why this over the next few years is going to really start to make a difference. You know, so of those people that were questioned as part of the Dimension Data Report, 71.5% of the respondents feel that improving analytics is going to make for better agent performance in their organisation. 69% believe that improving what they do with analytics is going to have a massively positive impact on customer experience. 52.5% of people say they feel that the use of analytics is going to help them improve customer journeys in their organisations. So you're going to have people in your organisation performing better. You're going to have customers feeling like they're getting a better service and a better experience with you. And their journey is going to feel smoother and quicker and less of a hassle for them. That feels like they're all good things that analytics is going to be at the forefront of delivering for your organisation. Many of you in this room today will be responsible for making that kind of difference in your organisation using analytics. Okay. Out of the Dimension Data Report, again, analytics voted the top trend that will change the industry in the next 5 years. So I suspect that many of you in the room here will have the opportunity to go away and implement some of these processes and practices and take some of these top tips today and be part of pushing, I guess, the improvement in analytics past that tipping point and really starting to make a difference in your organisations. And the Dimension Data Report talks about kind of what kind of good looks like and what kind of excellent will look like over the oncoming period. So consumer thinking and expectation are often moving faster than business that serve them. Try to stay ahead of the curve. The very fact that you guys are all in this room here today is a real demonstrable kind of show that you guys have got the appetite to want to stay ahead of the curve and try and learn how you can make more out of your kind of analysis and insight. So gathering data both internally and externally is difficult. So it's not easy, and I suspect that's why lots of people are here to try and seek some support to make it better. So interpreting insight and translating it into understandable and actionable business intelligence is clever. So that's kind of that's them saying actually we think that's kind of one step beyond just interpreting kind of some of the insight and gathering it. So turning it into understandable and actionable intelligence is clever. Driving change, so actionable change, is what is kind of SMART is going to look like going forwards. We were just in a session previous to this one next door, and we were talking about actually some insight teams out there in their organisations have now got delivering change as almost part of the title of their team. So we are the kind of actionable change team as part of the insight function. So we've got a specific responsibility, this part of our insight function, to go out into the organisation and make a difference. So that's how important that we see that being. So really important that we're not just doing analysis for analysis' sake, and we're actually doing something and making a difference in the business with it. So how can we get smart? How can we get to that point where we can start to make a difference and make a change in our organisation? Going to hear lots of things from our speakers today. Certainly towards the kind of second half of this list, I'm going to talk a little bit about context next, and then Ian's going to join us and talk to us about telling a story, and then Marie's going to get up and tell us about kind of how we can display the data in the right way, how we can eliminate clutter, focus on our priorities, and kind of start to a bit of design thinking around how we kind of articulate our information. So in terms of context, some of you will have seen this before. It's in this year's best practice guide. It's been in previous best practice guides, 5 steps to success. Really the context part of this is starting to think about where am I now and where do I want to be? What have we got and what results and what difference do I want to make in the organisation? And thinking about our analytics in those terms, in terms of how can I change what we've got now or use what we've got now to make a particular difference in the organisation. And often it's worth thinking about the difference between exploratory analysis and explanatory analysis, and quite often you might recognise this in your organisation and even within your team, whereby lots of work is done almost in a bit of a scattergun approach where we just go off and look at everything. We've got 27 different types of reports, and we've pulled all this data, tons and tons. We've got a 75-page PowerPoint that we're going to present to someone and say, look at all this work we've done. Aren't we brilliant analysts? What a great insight function we are. We must be, because we've produced a 75-page PowerPoint document. Okay? That's quite nice, but actually, probably within that 75-page PowerPoint, there might only be 1 page or 2 page, which is actually where you're going to make a difference, and you're going to use that insight to drive a valuable change in your organisation. And so this kind of difference between exploratory and explanatory is about thinking about, do the exploratory piece, that's 75 pages, and keep it a bit internal. Keep that amongst yourselves within your team, and then go, right, within that, what are the 2 explanatory pieces of analysis that I need to go and tell our stakeholders? So almost kind of taking one step back, rather than rushing in and just going, we're just going to throw everything at you. The way we're going to make a difference with some of this is just to think about actually what's important, what is the context that I need to put this into for you as a stakeholder. So just think about the couple of things within that are going to make a difference. Also within context, we need to think about things like who, what and how. So, you know, what's my role in this? What is my audience's role in this piece of analysis that I'm doing? You know, what are they looking to get out of that piece of work? I mean, to think about kind of what is the action that we want that audience to take? What is the mechanism that I'm going to use to drive them to take that action? What is the tone that I'm looking to set? You know, is this piece of analysis, is it about celebration? Is it about firefighting? Is it about problem solving? You know, are we in a recovery situation? Or are we in a situation where we are kind of advertising to the world what a brilliant job we're doing, and that's how we're using that analysis? These are all things you really need to start thinking about before you then go and have that conversation and tell that story and communicate that analysis with your stakeholder. And then finally, thinking about the how, you know, kind of what are the different pieces of information? Think back to the exploratory piece there. What are about the different sources of information and the different pieces of data that I can pull together? And start to think about that in with a little bit more methodology before we actually start doing the analysis. So start to understand in the context of who your audience is, what action you want to take, allow that to help drive your choice around the kind of information that you seek out. So what? So what's the point in kind of doing some of this kind of preparatory work in the context phase? I think it's really about these kind of couple of concepts here. You know, the 3-minute story, you know, the so what. Can you boil down the point that you're trying to make into 1 paragraph or 2 sentences, so that if you only get a couple of minutes to articulate your insight and your analysis to get someone to make a difference. Can you do that succinctly just in 2 minutes? Think about 2 or 3 minute story. Can I go into the room if I've got half an hour on the agenda and then the meeting's run over and I get told, actually, you weren't the top priority today, so can you just tell us in 2 or 3 minutes what it was you came to this meeting for? Can I think about every piece of analysis and every story I want to tell with numbers and boil that down into just a 3 minute story? And then almost, can you take that further on and can you say, actually, is there just one sentence that I could go into that meeting and say, and people will get what the point of the analysis of the insight that I'm trying to put across? What is the unique point of view? What's at stake? What's the big idea that this analysis is going to tell us that we could do differently in the organisation? Okay, Blaise Pascal's on here. He's got a similar sort of era to Shakespeare. We're in Stratford at the minute. Famous quote of his: "If I made this letter longer than usual, I've made this letter longer than usual only because I've not had time to make it shorter." Yeah. So this is about actually making things shorter is difficult. It takes time and investment and effort and preparation. Okay. So you can only do that if you really understand the point you're trying to make. Andy Bounds, some people may know Andy Bounds. He's been at various kind of events we've done in different guises before. Kind of famous for kind of talking around communication skills. One of the things he says is go to PowerPoint last, not first. So think about your message. Think about what is the 3 minute story. Think about, can I boil the 3 minute story down to one unique point of view? Once I'm there, then I'll get PowerPoint out and start thinking about how I'm going to put that on some slides. Yeah? So just kind of almost reverse engineer how we might do some of these things currently. Excellent. I'm going to hand you over now to Ian Robertson, who's going to talk us through the hero's journey. So over to you, Ian.
Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to start today by talking about belief. We all have our beliefs. Some of them are right, some of them are wrong. But one thing that got in common is if you believe something strongly enough, then you'll be very resistant to anything that challenges that. And that's the problem we often have with our stakeholders. Now, with belief, we keep throwing more and more facts at them, but they'll just ignore them because it doesn't match up with what they align. What we need to do is try and get those beliefs and the truth aligned, and that isn't easy. So, as mentioned, we throw the facts, that's the logical engagement, and that's, as analysts, is what we tend to be good at. What we're not so good at, and where we tend to struggle, is the emotional engagement, and it's the emotions that drive belief. It's the emotions that make a change. So what I'm going to be talking about now is some storytelling techniques, and that is taken from a book. I'm not sure if anyone's read this, Resonate by Nancy Grant. If you haven't, it's well worth looking up. I'll leave it at the back if anyone wants to have a thumb through afterwards. I'm going to be talking through a few techniques, and just a few. There's a lot more in there. So if it's a subject you're interested in, it's one really good resource. But what she's done is she's gone and looked at storytellers, because they really make us believe, even if it's just for a couple of hours, be it in a film or at a theatre or reading a book, you really start believing and empathising with those characters. So she's looked at the structure they use, and nearly all stories tend to use the same format. They start off with a hero in their ordinary world, and it shows you them in that background so you can understand them. Then they'll get a call to adventure. Normally, they'll initially refuse that call. They'll put up resistance. There'll be a barrier they put up before they meet with a mentor or a guide who helps push them through, until eventually they cross the threshold. Along the way, they'll have challenges, they'll face problems, but eventually they'll start to see the light, and all comes good at the end, where they call what they call the return of the Alexa, where they have the awards. So, like our award people on the award shortlist today, they're now at that point where they're celebrating that. Now, one person who really took this on board and actually completely rewrote the screenplay of what he was doing when he started was George Lucas, when he was writing Star Wars. And you can see here how that really follows that pattern. Now, just a matter of interest, is there anyone in this room who's not seen Star Wars? Yeah. Now, going back to what I was saying about truth and belief. The facts are there. People have raised hands saying they've not seen Star Wars, but probably there's still another half of this room, myself included, who don't believe that fact and are really struggling. For those of you who haven't seen Star Wars, the same rules apply. You can apply it to pretty much any book, anything you've read. I could have done this same example with a Shakespeare play, but unfortunately I'm not that deep. I know my level. So what Nancy did when she looked at this was she said, how does this apply to our business? So she looked at a typical change process. And it starts off with a state of blissful ignorance. They may have a problem, but they don't know about it. And that's really where most of our stakeholders are. Or perhaps they choose that ignorance sometimes. But then they receive some insight that challenges that shows an opportunity or shows that things aren't right. And as we all know, the first thing is that gets met with scepticism and reluctance. I'm sure we've all faced that, and we'll all face it again. If that change goes through, and unfortunately many don't, many stall at this point, to do that, they need to meet an analyst or a guide to sort of push them through and help them and really make them believe, to get them past that scepticism and reluctance. Eventually, they'll agree to give it a go. It won't all go. Some people will support them. They'll get their own resistance. They'll face that same scepticism and reluctance. They'll have those barriers. But if they're properly engaged and they know it's the right thing to do, at that point they'll be determined to push on. Still, things will go wrong. The one thing you can guarantee with any plan is it won't go according to plan. We know things are going wrong, and when they do, it's quite easy to give up. But when they're getting discouraged, if it's the right thing to do, with the right insight, they'll start seeing those glimmers of success. And that will give them the encouragement to push on. So they meet that resistance, they push through that with renewed enthusiasm. Eventually they'll achieve success and ends up, everything's awesome, it's all brilliant. As we know, that's not the case. It's probably full circle. They're now blissfully ignorant of the next thing. So it is a circular thing, and an insight you'll be pushing and challenging on. And quite interestingly, is if you look at, in the book, brings up a continuous improvement cycle. When you make an improvement, things will grow slowly before eventually they'll mature. However, people have got a natural tendency to go back to their ordinary world. They will go back and things will decline. I'm sure we've all seen changes where that's happened. To counter that, you need to get that improvement and push them on again, keep that momentum going, pushing on the next change and the next. And for anybody who've seen the model on page 6 or in the session earlier, you can see how that aligns with the 4 model, continuous improvement model there. So our role as analysts is, what we've got to remember is we are not the hero. We've got to be the mentor. We're Yoda, we're not Luke Skywalker. We're Mr. Miyagi, we're not the Karate Kid. Your audience is the hero. They're the ones who are going to make that happen, and you've got to make everything revolve around them. The successes have got to be what interests them, and you've got to make that story about them, about the changes they're making and the successes they're going to get. It's not your chance to show how good you are. I think key thing, tip I heard somewhere as an analyst, their job is to be clever, not look clever. Your job is to make them look clever and make them make that change. So if you look at your role as an analyst, your role is to get that audience to cross the threshold and then prepare them for the rest of that journey so that change will go through. Now that sounds easy. Unfortunately, we all know it's not. You will all be faced with refusal of the call, and these are just a handful of reasons why people push back, why they resist. I'm sure you'll be familiar with some of those. I'm not going to talk through them. But the one thing in common is the way that you tackle them. What you need to do is you need to put yourself in their ordinary world. You understand it. You understand their reasons for reluctance, their reasons for putting up barriers. You can talk them through. Effectively, in your pack, you're giving them directions. And giving directions is all well and good if you know the destination, but that's not enough. You also need to know where they're starting from, otherwise your directions are useless. So taking the time, and it'll probably be the biggest part of understanding your audience, what matters to them, what drives them, what are their fears, what are their goals, will really help you overcome that resistance and push forward. And just the last thing I just want to talk about is that all great stories have conflict. Now, you don't really want conflict in your presentations. It does happen, unfortunately, but you want to avoid that. So what great presentations have is contrast. There's all sorts of ways that you can use contrast. You can contrast styles, contrast between what is and what could be. But just to close the loop, what I'm going to talk about here is, again, the contrast between logical and emotional engagement. So you produce a pack. It's got lots of great graphs, figures. That's all the facts. But doesn't really appeal to people's emotions. Just put things that appeal to emotionally. You all know that when a director comes and sits in your call centre, he puts a headset on, the first call he listens to, the first problem he hears is the biggest problem in the world and the one you want to resolve. That's because they've listened to that customer. They've now got emotionally attached to that. So why not, if you're reporting figures on an issue, give a clip to a couple of the calls, play them those, let them listen, or give them quotes, give them some customer feedback. Get that emotional connection in there and get that story in there as well. Okay, thanks very much. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pass you straight on now to Marie, who's going to talk about clear and compelling data.
Thanks, Ian. Hi everyone, thank you for coming. I'm sorry that some of you are on the cheap seats right over the back, but you're almost just as welcome. I decided to start with a quote today, but I haven't gone for Shakespeare. Hands up in the room who actually thinks this is an Einstein quote. It's not. Common myth, but it's one that we take very seriously in the role that we do. So tell me, just shout out from your tables, please, what you can take away from this page. What is that page telling you? It does help. Bit louder?
Busy.
It's busy. Does it tell you anything? How does it make you feel? Overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, yeah? Very weak, yeah. If you've done the stuff with Mark Dorsey, you feel like that. Not like this. Your role as an analyst is wasted if you're presenting information like that because your stakeholder can't understand it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do today is to share with you some techniques that we've got in RSA. So we use these as part of our team, broken into two parts. Make the message clear, present that data clearly so that you can actually get your message across first time to your stakeholder. Have a read of this. I'm hoping you can all see it. You have got the side tellies as well. Hopefully, there's a few pairs of glasses going on there. Some of you will have seen it already. Yeah. That's a very convoluted story. And there's not really a clear message in that. Would that have been any easier? Now, you've probably all got emails like, well, I hope not exactly like the previous one, but you've probably all got emails in your box that are a bit rambling, they're a bit long-winded, you don't really know what to do with them, you've had requests from people, you don't really know what they're asking. If they put the main idea first, you would understand that straight away. So they're answering your subconscious question in your brain, what do you want me to do? Yeah. They're focused on the answer because you've given them the main fact first. That subconscious question and answer in your brain is there whether you like it or not. We all have it, and you have it every time you receive an email, a letter, a PowerPoint presentation. Your invite to today, what's in it for me? What am I going to do? What do they want me to do with it? So by answering that question straight away, I'm already appealing to you. So you can see there, by using that format, putting your main idea first, to the summary at the top, you're starting to build your taglines. You're starting to build your story, and you can see straight away where you're leading your listener. It's called the pyramid principle by a lady called Barbara Minto, McKinsey's consultant. And what you're doing is putting your central idea first. So as an analyst, you are doing all the hard work. You're going through the data. You know what the solution is. You know what the outcome is, and you're putting that first. And then you're showing your audience why that is happening. Yeah? They're not having to go through the whole rigmarole of reading 180 pages. Or 140-page QBR pack to get to where they need to be. You're probably used to the other method. So as an analyst, you're used to working through your data, laying out all of those steps and then showing somebody what that looks like. Yeah? Which is counterintuitive to your stakeholder. Your stakeholder is asking, why am I got this meeting? Why are we having this? So if you're answering that question straight away, you're answering their subconscious question. So you would use this method, which is the deductive method, to go through all your steps when you're talking to your boss. So if I do a piece of analysis, my boss is in the room, we step by step go through everything I've done so that he can make sure I've done the right thing. He very often tells me I haven't, but when you're going to then present to a stakeholder, I don't need to do all those steps. They're trusting me to be the analyst that does my job properly. They want to know what the outcome is. So I tell them what the outcome is. And for the Big Bang Theory fans amongst you, are there any Big Bang? Hands up, Big Bang Theory fans? Yeah? Ta-da! What does ta-da mean? Oh, come on. You've all seen that one. Ta-da is short for da-da-da-da. That's what you do with that method, because you're showing how great you are as an analyst. I've done my thinking, I've done all my work, this is the thing that you need to know best. So that's fine, you've gone through all that effort to tell your story. What happens then? So you're going to give them a few graphs and possibly you'll give them a pie chart. Wrong. There's 4 steps to this process. You determine your message, which you've already done. You identify your comparison, and there'll only ever be 5. Yeah? So you will have a change over time. You will have a component, which is a percentage of your total. You'll have a ranking, you'll have a frequency, and you'll have correlation. That's it. You won't need any other comparisons. Once you've got that comparison, you then select your chart. And again, there will only ever be 5. No pie chart. You don't need pie charts. Yeah. They're fairly self-explanatory. You have a trend over time. So you show that as a line graph, so you can very clearly see that trend. And you have got packs. You will all have sat down at the tables with packs, so you'll have these to take away. Your component is a Pareto, which is a sorted line graph, a sorted column graph. What you're telling your stakeholder straight away is where your problems are. And you've got your histogram. Your box plot, wouldn't recommend giving your box plot to your stakeholder because they probably won't understand it. You'll spend so long explaining the box plot, you've lost a point. But actually, it's good for an analyst to use those. And then your scatters. So we use the scatters a lot in our world where we're looking at handler variation. Yeah. And this is a bit busy, so I apologise for those at the back that will struggle to read this, but again, you'll get this page to take away. So there's 5 principles. Once you've decided what chart you're going to use, what do you do with it? Well, you support your point that you're trying to make. Don't give your stakeholder a graph with a different story because you've lost them. They're not going to see that connection. So it has to support the point that you're trying to make with your story. Keep it simple. So you don't need any excess ink. So for all of those of you that love 3D, lose it. You don't need a 3D chart. It's excess ink. You can take out axes lines. You can take out all the unnecessary ink that doesn't add to your story. The most important part of your graph is your data series. Show that. You can take your legend out. If you annotate your graph, you can put the label straight on your series and then you've lost your legend, so your reader isn't having to go up and down. Make it legible. So as I get older, I'm struggling to read size 10 font, and I'm sure there's others in the room that are having the same problem. So if I can't read it when I give it to somebody, how are they going to read it? So think about that when you're presenting. Appropriate scaling. Be very careful if you are skewing your axes to drive your story. Does it tell the right story? And draw attention to it so that people know it's a skewed axis. Use colour deliberately. So within RSA, we have the joy of using purple. That's our brand colour. And I'm sure you've all got brand colours with your own companies. But think very carefully about those colours. Do they point you in the right direction for your graph? Are they misleading your audience when you're using those graphs? In which case, go to the softer palette colours in your branding. And then annotate. Be brave. You can put a note on your graph to draw attention to what you want your stakeholder to see. It's very simple, but people forget to do it. So using those methods, we can take this, which is based on real data, and we can make it look like that. So straight away you've got your message, and straight away you've got a much clearer graph. Sorry, I can't go off the end. So you can see very clearly what your series are trying to tell you. And you can see there that we've taken the legend off and we've annotated each series straight away, so your eye is not jumping up and down around the graph. So simple steps, just need to think to take them. And it's not just us that think this way. So what you have on your tables is a very colourful pie chart. And we're just going to spend 10 minutes as groups talking to each other. Sorry, I know you've done a lot of that today. Using those techniques, what would be your message? What comparison are you trying to make? What chart would you select? And how would you present it? So you'll have about 10 minutes, and then at the end we'll go around the tables and you can shout out what you've done with it.
Okay, right, we'll just draw that to a bit of a close. I'm just going to get some feedback from a couple of tables. Ian, I'll start over here with Marvellous Table 5. Mike, what ideas? Come on, how are we going to do this pie chart differently?
We thought it was brilliant. Didn't need any changes.
Excellent. Is there a reason you sat that far from the door?
No, I think the general consensus was that not a pie chart, perhaps group some of the smaller things together, maybe anything less than 5%. Colour is meaningless here, maybe turn it into a bar chart, simplify it a little bit.
Excellent. Marie, is that right idea?
Anybody else got any ideas? Okay, so we've got a couple. Is Ian around? Ian's around there with the microphone, isn't he?
There we go.
That's better.
I'll turn it down a bit. No, we were pretty much the same. Went through that the same exercise you put up on there. Said, this is the worst possible way of doing things. So let's turn it into a bar chart for the smaller parts. Maybe have a bit of a breakout chart for people who are interested in
Okay.
what you could group as the other.
Yep.
So it is all there. It's up and off to one side kind of thing. Just so it shows it's full relevant information, but lose the colour and stack rank everything. So you've got a nice clear progression through the different
Okay.
categories.
Cool, thank you. We had another couple over here.
Oh,
Can you?
excellent. Here you go.
My glamorous assistant.
Hello. We had probably a bit of an alternative view that without knowing what story you need to tell, it's impossible to do it. Because, for example, it could be, what's the defence spend as a proportion of the total? Because you might try to make a story about defence spend.
Absolutely. Yep, no, well done. Thank you. I'm glad somebody said that, because that was where we got to. So I prepared this pack with my boss, and we put my version of the graph in, and that was pretty much exactly what you said, wasn't it? It was what is the real story here? Do you show it the way it is? Or actually, is there something else going on? So what I did with this, so the reason I've used the bar chart rather than the column chart is because you've got quite long headers. So actually it allows you to have your headers in full. The other is sorted out at the bottom, and there is the argument that actually a lot of the small stuff would all drop into other because you wouldn't want to see it. But it is not necessarily the right chart to have, as pointed out, because you don't really know the story at the bottom of it. So this was taken off of Google, this was taken off the HMRC site. This is how your tax is broken down in 2015. Yeah, and that's how they think they can communicate to you. Doesn't bode well, really, does it? So, to summarise what we've done, we've made the message clear. So by using the Pareto method, by using the pyramid method, you'll put in your summary idea first, and then you'll put in your subsequent information afterwards. Now, in this instance, we're using it so every slide tells a story. So when you're using PowerPoint, every slide tells a clear story. You're not mixing your messages throughout your PowerPoint presentation. Yeah? The same rules apply for anything you build. So your dashboards, whether you're using emails, you can use this method. You just need to step back and think before you send something out. Those messages all then combine to tell the story that you want your stakeholders to take away. You're going to present the data clearly, so you're going to determine your message before you start. You're going to identify your comparison, pick the right chart, and then present it clearly by taking out all the rubbish. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you to Ian as well. Hopefully some useful bits and pieces for you. Marie referenced a couple of times, in front of you there's a pack, it's a takeaway pack for you. There's half a dozen kind of pages to that. Just really to give you something tangible that you can take away so you remember some of these concepts that we talked about. We've got just a couple of minutes left before the end of the session, so I thought it might just be a quick opportunity for you to have a little chat in your tables. You don't have to stand up. It says stand up on there, I don't know. You don't have to stand up, we can stay seated. Just have a talk in your tables about what was the most significant part of the presentation for you, what's the one thing that you might take away and try and do differently, and then we'll have a couple of minutes if you've got an opportunity, if you wanted to ask Marie any questions around what you've heard today. So just a couple of minutes in your tables, that'd be great, thank you.